You walk into a room full of strangers. Before anyone says a word, your brain has already decided who to trust. It takes less than a second. You haven't heard their voice. You haven't shaken their hand. You just looked at a face, and some ancient part of you already made a judgment. But the real answer for why this happens is far stranger than instinct. It isn't really about them at all. It's about a decision your ancestors couldn't afford to get wrong. Think about the last time you met someone new, maybe at a job interview, maybe on a first date, maybe just passing someone on the street. Did you notice the split second where your body reacted before your mind caught up? A tightening in your chest. A flicker of ease. That reaction happened before you processed a single word they said. Psychologist Alexander Todorov spent years studying exactly this moment, and what he found changes how you should think about every first impression you've ever had. Todorov's research showed that people form judgments about trustworthiness from a face in about 1/10 of a second. Not 1 second. 1/10 of 1 second. Giving someone more time to look didn't make the judgment more accurate. It just made them more confident in a snap decision they'd already made. Your brain isn't reading the person in front of you. It's running a shortcut so old that it predates language itself. Here's the part that should unsettle you a little. That shortcut isn't reading truth. It's reading shape. Certain structural features of a face, things like the width of the cheekbones relative to the eyes, the curve of the eyebrows, the angle of the jaw, trigger trust or distrust regardless of what kind of person is actually behind that face. A perfectly kind stranger with a naturally strong brow might read as intimidating. A dishonest stranger with soft, wide eyes might read as safe. Your brain doesn't know the difference. It's not measuring character. It's pattern matching against a template built for a world that no longer exists. So, where did that template come from? To answer that, you have to go back further than modern psychology. You have to go back to a time when meeting a stranger wasn't a social nicety. It was a survival event. For most of human history, you didn't live in a city of thousands of anonymous faces. You lived in small, tightly bound groups, often no larger than a few dozen people. Everyone you knew for years. A new face appearing at the edge of camp wasn't background noise. It was a variable that could determine whether you ate that night or whether you didn't wake up the next morning. Anthropologists studying small-scale societies have found that encounters with unfamiliar individuals were rare enough and consequential enough that a fast read on threat versus safety wasn't a luxury. It was survival math. There was no time for careful evaluation, no time to gather references, watch behavior over weeks, build trust slowly. If a stranger approached, your ancestors needed an answer immediately. Fight, flee, or welcome. A brain that hesitated too long to decide was a brain that might not get a second chance. And so, over hundreds of thousands of years, a fast facial trust system got wired in and kept, generation after generation, because on balance, it worked often enough to keep people alive. But here's the twist. It didn't need to be accurate. It only needed to be fast. Evolution doesn't optimize for truth. It optimizes for survival odds across millions of repeated situations. A system that's right 80% of the time and instant beats a system that's right 95% of the time and takes 10 minutes to compute, if the 10 minutes might get you killed. So the trust reading system your brain runs today wasn't built to correctly identify who is honest. It was built to correctly avoid ambush often enough to keep the population alive. Those are not the same goal, and the gap between them is where your modern misjudgments live. Psychologist Nalini Ambadi's research on what she called thin slicing adds another disturbing layer to this. Her studies found that people could form surprisingly consistent judgments about others, teachers' effectiveness, sales performance, even outcomes in legal settings, from just a few seconds of exposure, sometimes without any sound at all. The judgments were consistent. Different observers tended to agree with each other. But consistency isn't the same as accuracy. Everyone agreeing on the same fast impression doesn't mean the impression is correct. It just means everyone is running the same ancient shortcut, and that shortcut has consequences that go far beyond who you decide to chat with at a party. Researcher Leslie Zebrowitz spent decades studying what's known as facial stereotyping, the tendency to attribute personality traits to people based purely on facial structure. Her work found that faces which appear more babyish, rounder, with larger eyes, tend to be judged as more trustworthy and less competent, regardless of the person's actual character. Faces with more mature, angular features tend to be judged as more dominant and less warm. None of this tracks the truth of who someone is. It tracks how closely their face resembles categories your ancestors' brains learned to sort quickly. This isn't just an academic curiosity. It shapes elections, where facial competence judgments made in a fraction of a second have been shown to correlate with real-world voting outcomes. It shapes courtrooms, where facial trustworthiness has been linked to differences in sentencing. It shapes hiring, dating, even how strangers respond to you on the street, all without a single one of those judges consciously deciding to be swayed by cheekbones and eyebrows. Now bring this back to that room full of strangers. That flicker of unease you felt looking at someone's face, or that instant sense of ease with someone else, wasn't a verdict on who they are. It was your brain running software written for a world of small tribes and rare encounters, applied to a world of subways, video calls, and thousands of faces scrolling past on a screen every single day. The system was never upgraded. It's still making split-second survival calls in a world where survival almost never depends on a stranger's face anymore. Think about how often you do this without noticing, swiping through a dating app in under a second per photo. Deciding within moments whether a new coworker seems approachable. Trusting or distrusting a stranger's recommendation online based on their profile picture alone. Every one of these moments is your ancient trust system firing off the same ambush detection code it was built with, applied to situations it was never designed for. You are not judging character. You are pattern matching against a template shaped by a world that no longer exists. Here's the part worth sitting with. Knowing this doesn't erase the instinct. You can't turn off a system this deeply wired just by reading about it. But you can catch it in the act. The next time your gut reacts strongly to a stranger's face, in either direction, you can ask yourself a different question. Not, do I trust this person? But, why did my brain decide this so fast, and what is it actually reacting to? That pause, small as it is the only real defense you have against a system built for ambushes, now running quietly underneath every ordinary human encounter you have. So the next time you walk into a room full of strangers, and your body reacts before your mind catches up, remember what's actually happening. It isn't them you're reading. It's a message from every ancestor who ever had to guess right about a stranger, fast, or didn't survive to pass that instinct down to you.